Okay. All right. Well, wonderful. So it's great to be here with all of you, and I know that many of you are at a point where you're finishing up some training or uh, some learning more about cybersecurity and are looking for your first role. And it's an exciting time. So I would say congratulations to all of you. To reach this point is huge. It is a milestone and should definitely celebrate different milestones. And then, of course, getting your first cybersecurity interview would be a huge milestone, or, and then, of course, getting the job would be great. So, want to celebrate all of those things along the way. And what I thought that I would start off doing is just sharing with you about my first experience getting my first job. And so, many of you may have already had a first job and then have gone back and focused on training in cybersecurity and are now going into work in cybersecurity. Some of you may be now just, you're actually looking to get your first job. But what I'll just share about me and my experience was I went from undergrad to grad school, and I was interning at a foreign policy think tank in DC. So I'm again, my name is Jessica Robinson, and I am from just outside of Chicago. So I don't know if many of you are from Illinois, but I grew up there, and I went to the University of Pittsburgh for grad school after graduating from Western Illinois University in undergrad. And then after that, I moved to DC. And I was really focused on, at that time, a couple of things that I was really passionate about. One, security. Two, international affairs. And also, I was really passionate about thinking about development work internationally. And so, how could I somehow mix the three of them? So, those were kind of my initial focuses at that time. Now, they still are focuses for me, and I do that. I do that now. But as I was entering at this foreign policy think tank, I was applying for many different jobs. I was learning that as I applied for different jobs, that there were some jobs that I actually weren't interested in, and so that was a good learning experience for me. And then I learned that there were some roles that I applied for that maybe I just wasn't a good fit for because my experience didn't really match what they were looking for. And I started to apply for a wide variety of roles within the government, roles within international relations that some were at law firms, for example. Applied for roles with international organizations. And then I applied for roles that were as part of the Hill, meaning Capitol Hill, because that's part of the government as well. And so at the end of the day, or at the end of that time period, I'd applied for about 200 jobs, I realized. And as I was applying for all of these jobs that I really wanted to work that had the intersection of my interest, I was really disappointed to find out that I didn't hear back from any of those jobs, applications that I put in, that in many cases I didn't seem to be the right fit. And part of that was because obviously if you're looking for roles that also have international scope, then they're looking for people that have worked internationally before. So though I had studied abroad, I hadn't actually worked internationally. Though I had taken Spanish, Mandarin, and French, I wasn't actually fully fluent in those languages. And so I started to realize that, okay, maybe I have to cut back on what some of the things that I'm looking for. So I decided to just focus on the security piece of it. And then that's when things started to open up. And so I ended up applying for a job in the private sector. And I remember when I applied for this job, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I really want this. It's completely different than what I'm looking for, but I'm going to apply anyway. And sure enough, the person who was the hiring manager called me and asked if I would come in for an interview. And I was kind of like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this. This is just so different from what I imagined. But I went in and I just kind of happened to get through the interview. Um, um, I, uh, I was then sent to a second interview and I happened to get through that interview. And then and then I went to a third one. And by this time, I was a bit more invested. So I was like, okay, it's a little bit different than what I'm looking for. I was with large company, a top 50 company, a Fortune 50 company. Again, I had not imagined working in the private sector. So though ideally many people would want this role, it just hadn't occurred to me, because for security, I had always thought, oh, I'm going to work for the government, or I'm going to do certain things in security. But so this was just a little bit out of my scope of thinking about what type of security roles could be available for me. And so I went to the third interview, and I made it past that interview, and then was made an offer. And I accepted the role, and I did it somewhat reluctantly, because again, it just wasn't the role that I had imagined. But after I got into the role, I soon realized that it was something that I would come to love. And I was so grateful of the opportunity to work for this company and to have the experience to do the work that I was doing. And that company was Target Corporation. So I'm sure many of you have heard of Target, have been to Target. And so I was so incredibly grateful. And again, I just never thought about security for a private sector company. I didn't know all of the opportunities that were there. And I share this to say, as you're going in for your first role, that one of the things that I've learned is that, as you can have a variety of interests, and you can have a variety of things that may interest you, but sometimes just focusing on that one piece, right? The core piece of security versus some of these other interests that may influence the role, that could be the best way to actually get your foot in the door to get your first security role. Right? We may be very specific about the work we want to do, but sometimes we just need to be open. So the second thing is, I didn't think that I wanted it, right? I was kind of like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I want to work in the private sector, if I want to work for a retailer, what is this going to be like? I don't know what security is going to be like doing this. And it turned out to be one of the best experiences I've ever had working with an organization. And so I think just being open, allowing yourself to be open to different possibilities as you're looking, even for some of your first roles that you're applying for, can just be a really great thing to do. And then in terms of just overall, have understanding the importance of flexibility, I think is important. That there are times in our lives where, particularly when it comes to work, where we wind up doing different things we never thought that we would do. It's possible that some of you never thought that you would be studying security and being prepared to interview for some of your first security roles, but that's part of the beauty of life, right? So I just think that I just wanted to share that, to say that there is no cookie cutter approach to getting your first job, but there are some things that we can definitely do to help make sure that from a preparation standpoint that you are prepared. And so again, what I learned was, yes, there are many things that I wanted in my first role, but it was really, the security piece that was the core part of my experience, and that though I didn't initially want it, it was the best thing for me as I was starting my career, so that I can grow and really grow into a security leader. And then flexibility is always good. So just keep that in mind as you're looking at the different roles that you're applying for. And so in thinking about how do we really think about preparing for our first interview, and so the first thing is obviously preparation, right? So you do want to make sure that you yourself are prepared, right? That you have a resume that's been reviewed by someone, that it's truly reflective of your experience, that it represents who you are as an individual, it represents your experience, it represents your schooling, courses that you've taken, and that there's a little bit about you in it, right? That maybe you have some of your interests, some of your hobbies. I think all of that is really important. And part of preparation is also practicing interviewing. And we'll talk about interviewing in a few minutes, but practicing interviewing is really important because it isn't something that just comes naturally to people, and it is something that takes preparation. And it's something that you want to be mindful of as you're starting to go throughout your process of looking at which companies that you even want to work with. And then, of course, when it comes to preparation, is preparation around your own skill sets when it comes to security. And the great thing is in today's world, there are so many different types of security roles that people can have, and it's extremely exciting. But have an idea of what it is that you really are interested in, what type of role that you want, but also that the skill sets that you have on your resume and also how you talk about them uh, really do fully uh, you know helps the reader or helps the listener to know that you would be great for that role that you're applying for. And so don't always let the person who's interviewing you connect the dots. It's important for you to be able to connect the dots for them. And this is really important when it also comes to telling your own story in an interview process, and being able to share why you are interested in security and why you want to work for that organization and why they should hire you, and why your skill sets, the courses you've taken, and the experience that you've had does uniquely fit into what it is that they're looking for. And this just goes on. The second thing I would say is know the role that you want. But this also goes, I would also say be flexible, right? Because what I learned is that though I went into a role that I actually didn't want, it turned out to be really great for me. And I learned so much, and I realized that I actually did need that. And so there's this balance though between knowing the role that you want, but also being flexible enough to be willing to take another role to learn. And there's so many different opportunities now within cybersecurity to do so many different types of work. And Cybersecurity Ventures just put out an article that has 50 different cybersecurity titles that every job seeker should know about. So I wanted to put in every one of these 50 job titles here because I just wanted you to see that there are a plethora of different types of experience that companies are looking for and that you can train for to do within these different organizations. And as all of these roles exist, and some of them may be different from organization to organization, some very much are combined in different organizations, but these are all just different ways to be able to understand what it is that you want, where it is that you want to spend your time, and what it is that you want to be doing. There's no doubt that we all want to be happy. We all want to have a job that we enjoy, that we all want to be able to, uh, enjoy the work that we're doing. So part of this is also a self-discovery for you so that you know what you want, and that you can also look at your experience. You can look at the classes you've taken. You can take a look at where your interests or passions lie and start to really merge all that together to know what really is right for you. Okay. And so I'm happy to obviously share, some of you may have already seen this article, but I'm also happy to share this article with Lindsay so that you all have it. But just, take the time to know what you're looking for. And I think also because this particular article just gives a brief description of what the people in these roles do, that when you actually start to apply for roles, you can, you're not, though it should have a clear description, every organization is different, but this just gives that high level perspective, and you can get an idea of what people are doing within these roles, which can be fun and can be exciting. And then you can start to think about career pathing. One of the questions you could potentially get in an interview is, where do you want to go? Where do you see yourself? And looking at something like this, where you're kind of taking a look at these different roles, you can probably go, yeah, well, this role that I'm interviewing for may be an analyst role, but wow, look at all these different roles that exist. And you can say, well, in the future, I would love to be an operations specialist, or I would love to be an investigator, or anything like that. And that could be a great thing to be able to share with someone who asks you that question, because they know you're giving one, that you're really thinking about this, that you're being intentional, right? And also, particularly if they have those roles within their organization, they know that you're someone who could grow with them. And that's always something that an employer would like to know. Okay. So, so now we want to talk about research and researching the company. And so I do think that this is an important thing to do, and to be able to know the type of company that you're interviewing with, and to know about the company that that you want to work for. And I think that it's important to understand their values. It's important to understand maybe their trajectory and their growth of their cybersecurity program, if there's a way to find out information about that. It's important to know about the people that you may be interviewing with. So being able to do some research on LinkedIn before you actually meet with them. And then have an opportunity to know how large the company is. How large is the cybersecurity team? All of this can be great for you to know as well. And these also could be great questions for you to ask when you go through the interview process, because uh, this could also be great for you to know if you want to grow with the company. Like maybe you're super excited about the opportunity to work for this company, and it's an opportunity for you to potentially grow with the company and know what growth opportunities exist. Research can help you to learn that. And there can be other things as you're doing research about the company that you may learn that you're like, oh, I don't know if this is actually a company that I want to work for. Maybe they don't match your values, or maybe they're having some challenges in some way, and so maybe that's not a company that you want to work with. But either way, doing that research is important. Every company has their own culture, whether they have intentionally created that culture or not. They have the culture, so you want to know if you fit into that culture, and doing some research beforehand can let you know about that. And I do think that that's important also, because they have their own language within that culture. So being able to think about that is very important in thinking about your first interview. I can almost tell you for sure that as someone who is interviewing you will be very well, you will stand out if you are able to show that you have done some research on the company, and particularly would have an understanding of the goals of the company, the growth of the company, and even have some information around cybersecurity. Or some companies may put out briefings or would have some things that you can download about cybersecurity, for them to know that you've actually have done some research beforehand and have read that, and you may have some comments on it. That's something that can make you stand out. So another thing, and this is where we'll start talking about the interview process. So answer the questions asked. And I think this is really important. And you may be thinking like, well, of course I'm going to answer the questions asked. But sometimes I've learned in interviewing people that they don't actually answer the question. And it's always kind of very curious. And so you want to ensure that you're really listening throughout the interview process, that you're really listening. And so really being able to really answering the questions that are being asked is important. And so there are many different types of questions, right? So people may ask you questions like, tell me more about your background. Tell me more about who you are. Tell me more about your passions. Why are you interested in cybersecurity? Tell me about your skills relevant to this particular role in cybersecurity. Why is it that you want to work for this organization? How do you see your career path going forward within cybersecurity? They may talk to you about their cybersecurity program, and they may want to, and they may tell you more information, and then ask you questions specifically about what they've told you, to see if you think and they think that you could be a good fit for what it is that they're doing. And so all of that is, all of those questions I think can be somewhat straightforward, but nonetheless, paying attention to those and answering those directly are really important to do. Then some companies and some individuals ask what are called behavioral based questions. And these are questions where they're trying to understand more about your experience, particularly where you have exuded certain skill sets in the past. So for example, they may ask you a question that's like, tell me about a time when you had to solve a problem very quickly in a short period of time. So what they're asking you is an example of a time where you have actually had to do that, right? Where you have actually had to solve a problem in a problem in a short period of time, and what you did to do that. They're not asking you how you would do it in the future if it happened, right? So understanding the types of questions that your interviewer is going to be asking you is important. And you can always ask, hi, are there specific questions that you're asking that I should be prepared for? Or is this going to be a behavioral based interview? Anything like that could be really good and important to know. Because when someone starts to go down these lines of questions where they're asking you about your experience of when you've done something in the past and you don't answer those questions in the way that they're asking, that can be a flag. It can be a red flag of either one, you're not listening and you're not listening to the question that they're asking, or two, that you don't have experience doing that. Because they're literally asking you, tell me about a time when you, all right, not tell me about how you would do something, but tell me about a time when you did do something. So I just think that that's really, really important for you to understand that. And also, I think for people that are interviewing for the first time, they may not understand all the different types of questions that interviewers may ask. So just having an understanding of that is important. Okay. So and then of course, what I'll say is follow up after your interview, and always, send a follow-up note. You can thank them for their time. If you happen to have any additional questions, don't be shy to ask if you have them. And I think that too, also, no matter what, whether you get the interview or get the job or not, that's something that people will remember that you did that. And because not everyone does it, so people will remember when you do. And if you connect with them on LinkedIn, then also you'll be connected with them, right? So whether you get that, maybe for whatever reason you don't get that role, but that doesn't mean that you couldn't be great for another role in the future with that organization. It also doesn't mean that, let's say that for whatever reason, that person that they hired didn't work out, but then now you potentially could be someone that they thought about and was like, you know what? That person really stood out to me. They asked questions, they knew about the company, they came in prepared. They had good questions while they were here. They sent a follow-up note. This person that we hired didn't actually work out, but you know what? This person connected with me on LinkedIn. Maybe I can send them a quick note and see if they'd be open to a conversation. I mean, you never know what could happen, but just being consistent throughout the process of your communication with them is a way to stand out. Okay. And then ask for feedback if you don't get the role. This is also something that a lot of people don't do. And the truth is, I think it's really hard nowadays, of course, when you have so many people that can be going through an interview process. But and of course, it's very hard when you apply for a role and you just don't hear back about anything. But I think that if you are at the point when you've gotten to the point where you are able to go through the interview process, asking for feedback, particularly as a young leader like yourself. People are more willing to give feedback, for, I think, particularly to young leaders. So I wouldn't be shy about asking for that. So then that would be, when you send that follow-up email, you have their email address. So if you don't hear back, you can always say, hey, it seems like maybe I didn't get the role. I would really just love to have any feedback that you may have. And if you don't hear anything back, don't be disappointed. You're a young leader. So there's, one of the things that one of my mentors used to say to me is, you still have so much to learn. He would say that to me quite often. And I have a better understanding of that now than I did then. And but even when I would go through different challenges, intellectually I understood it, but I understand it much differently now because it's just true. Experience really does play a role in really helping to support the journey of an individual. And so don't take it personally, but do ask for feedback, so that's something that can help you on that next interview. Because you never know if you could be, you never know if you get feedback on an interview that you didn't get, from an interview that you didn't, for a job you didn't get, and you can take that information into the next interviews that you do. And that really is so incredibly valuable. And so, of course, you just want to stay motivated. You want to make sure that you're staying motivated throughout the process. You want to remember that this is a journey, and that each step is really preparation for the role. And and I just like to use what happened in my experience as an example. I mean, I applied for like over 200 jobs. I went through numerous interviews, and it wasn't until I kind of changed the types of organizations that I was applying for, did I start to get the type of interest that I was looking for. And in the end, I ended up getting a role with a company I ended up being in a role I never thought I would have. And I ended up working for a company I would never thought that I would work for. So you just never know, but just continue to stay motivated throughout the process. And that's it's just extremely important.